All right, so Saquon is now even richer. DK Metcalf and Trey Hendrickson are seeking trades on their own. Weird new phase we're in pro sports. Christian Kirk's now a Texan, and free agency hasn't even started yet. Hi and hello, and welcome to Shek Show. Eddie Spaghetti now on the other side of Sports America in the Sunshine State. In his usual spot, though, behind the glass, and there he is seated high atop show business. It's Kevin Hench. He's ready to break it all down for you. Before we hear from him, we had to get you our weekly dose of Kevin Hench. Go back and listen to the earlier episode this week when we talked to draft guru Lance Zierlein, one of our favorite guys. We do it every year, our annual exercise of if your team had the first overall pick, who would they take? It's instructive. It tells you who's the best player, who the best players are at position, and in this draft. So go back and listen to that. Some good times. We also asked them if by team, if you could add one player back from that franchise's history, who would it be? Let's start off with that question there as we say hello to Hench. What's the poop, fella? How are you? Who would the Patriots take if you could add one player from their history to the 2025 roster, given the team needs? I know you would say Brady, but they have their guy installed in Drake May. Who would you add around him?
Um, it's a good question. Maybe Gronk.
I think that's correct.
You know,
I think that is the 100%
I mean,
correct.
for many decades, the best player in Patriots history was a left guard. Which would
I
be
heard that from a
sad if you
couple
went.
curmudgeons reached out to say, I hope John Hannah got a mention.
I mean, if you went John Hannah, a left guard can only do so much to advance the prospects of your team, whereas Gronk would, if Brady was off the table. Well, what's funny though is the Patriots, the area of needs for the Patriots are tackle football. Literally, like everybody but Drake May, we could use an upgrade. That said, so the Patriots have no receivers. Like I was kind of having this I was having this little semi argument about like how good Drake May was last year, and I was like, he literally does not have an above average receiver. Like not one guy is above average. And then I saw DK Metcalf come across the ticker, as wanting out, and I was like, don't want him. Isn't that weird? Like you're like, you have nobody, and then DK is like, hey man, I'm available. You're like, no thanks. I've watched and I've had you in fantasy enough to know about the 2 catches for 23 yards on 9 targets, and on one of the catches you fumbled. Yeah, no thanks.
And the inexplicable drops that have plagued him as well. That
Drops
drives me
and then
crazy.
drops after he catches it and runs. Like leads the league in fumbles after catches over the last 5 years. And it's like it's just weird to be that incredible a physical specimen. And I'd rather carry on with Keishon Boutte.
Okay, so your final answer for the New England Patriots of 2025, if you can put one guy back in there who they I think Gronk is a good choice. You could go Randy Moss, obviously. I think and one of those guys. The John Hannah thing, it is one of the best things. It is the talk about steering public opinion about a matter that nobody actually understands. How about I don't know, what year was that? 1980-ish, somewhere around there. The Sports Illustrated arrives at young Kevin Hench's mailbox, and he grabs it, and he's thrilled because his favorite football team is represented in the person of John Hannah, an extreme close-up with his helmet on, and it says the best offensive lineman of all time. Or is that what it said? Or best offensive lineman ever, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And this forged John Hannah, who I guarantee you the vast majority of self-identifying football fans couldn't pick out of a lineup. Oh yeah, John Hannah. And then for the next 20 years, he became the reference for like great offensive linemen until Anthony Munoz came along. And then everybody's like, well, he's no Anthony Munoz. You wouldn't know anything about whether or not Anthony Munoz is good, bad, or somewhere in between if somebody else didn't tell you that. If Sports Illustrated didn't announce John Hannah is the greatest offensive lineman, no one would even know who he is, right?
Well, the funny thing about the way the game has evolved and what we now know it's like at least Anthony Munoz was a tackle. I mean, the guards function, like what we've learned, as you know, Joe Thuney kind of proved this beyond a shadow of a doubt, right? In the playoffs. All pro left guard can't block anybody as a left tackle. So the idea that John Hannah was better than all those tackles, better, better than Forrest Gregg or Rayfield Wright. I don't know who the greatest tackle of all time was prior to Ron Yeri, Gary Zimmerman. These guys who kept the quarterback upright. It's just clearly a much more important job than left guard. So, but what that says is, because the way sports evolve, like my hero Rick Burleson with his 295 on base percentage, like I'm like, oh, this guy was killing his team. My favorite player of all time was terrible. That's what you learn as sports evolve. And the geniuses of Sports Illustrated who are like the best offensive lineman of all time. He was an interior offensive lineman. No, he wasn't.
I do wonder. I'm guessing. I don't know, but it was the late Dr. Z, talent evaluator. But I wonder how many people in that moment agreed with him. There wasn't the pushback on any opinion that you floated out there on social media from hundreds of dips out there to disagree with you. But I wonder if that was the wisdom of the moment. Well, obviously John Hannah, and as I always say, and that's why I track down periodically. I track down Ross Tucker, Jeff Schwartz, or otherwise for the conversation about that. Like, I get it that at the same time as you can watch a running back, start like we talked about a year ago. Like, how big a difference can there be between DeAndre Swift, supreme physical specimen, and Saquon Barkley? As it turns out, significant difference. What a difference it made to the pro football team that they both were on year to year. But even understanding that, isn't it bizarre that like a 300-pound guy, like the ball snapped and then the guy's on you, and like you either are strong enough to put your hands on him or not. Like, how big a difference can there be between someone of a man of that carriage versus another man of the exact same carriage? I am endlessly fascinated by it, but it's ultimately an unanswerable thing because you could still show it to me. I don't think anybody out there, save a small handful of human beings, could correctly say like, oh yeah, that guy's an awesome offensive lineman.
But also
he's just mediocre. No one would know the difference.
So you have to, but there are measurables, and the way you might measure an offensive line, for example, is okay. How was the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line this year? Well, let's look at how many yards Saquon Barkley gained and how many yards per carry he averaged.
Get it, but the nuance of like, well, then the weakest link thing, that's what the offensive lineman will tell you. Is like, yeah, but if you have one bum out of 5, it ruins the whole thing. And you can't identify as a civilian whose responsibility is which guy to block. Only we know that. And so...
Well, again, so then I would say, okay, so John Hannah is the greatest offensive lineman of all time. What that results in for the Patriots is Sam Cunningham running for 1,015 yards at 3.9 yards a carry. Like, what's it resulting in? I've had this argument about Dick Butkus. Like, the Bears were terrible. They were just awful. Like, and I'm looking at the Bears points allowed and the Bears, finishing last and not making the playoffs. And it's like, what was his impact doing? Like, they're getting trampled game after game. And I think Hannah and Butkus both have this like physical dominance. Like, they're like, okay, yeah. But like, when Shaq is dominating physically, his team's winning 60 games every year. Like, it's like he's dominating in a way that translates to victories. And so it's like, maybe John Hannah's winning his block every play.
It's super funny. I didn't intend, who knows where a conversation with Kevin Hench is going to take us. I mean, I did not intend at all to deep dive offensive linemen and everything, but yeah, you're right. And in the 21st century, the QB is in fact the essential item, because you can't point out, save a 3-year stretch of Drew Brees having a losing record in New Orleans, of having a high-end quarterback and that not leading to success. If you have a high-end quarterback, you're always going to be around or in the playoffs, and more often than not winning a game or two or three that way. And when in the 70s and 80s, the running back was king to some degree in the NFL, that didn't have the same effect. Walter Payton was on many bum Bears teams. He was the best player in football, but what did that amount to? Nothing. Barry Sanders, same thing with him.
Well, double murderer O.J. Simpson was the greatest running back. I mean, when he ran for 2,000 yards, like that footage of him just trampling defenders, you're like, well, this team must have gone 12-2. Oh no, they were terrible and they missed the playoffs. Like, really?
Well, the Bills at least had a couple few years of at least getting to the postseason. They didn't make a ton of hay once they got there, but they were back. But yeah, that's interesting. And it's the least impactful superstar in a sport is the high scoring, sort of, I'm trying to think of how you would even describe him. I guess he would be a swingman kind of thing in the 80s in the NBA Western Conference. Alex English, and so on, right? I mean,
Dominique Wilkins had some of this too, where you're like,
yeah,
what do all these points mean? What do they mean? You never win it.
Does hockey have a bunch of guys like that? Not really. We do though talk about.
Obviously, I'm obsessed with plus minus in a way that the hockey.
I know, but in hockey, if you have a superstar tends, like we have talked about that, it's rare that you're a dominant player and your team never does anything. That's why the McJesus Draisaitl couplelessness continues to be fascinating to me, and not that they.
Well, listen, this is good because I can either talk about Bill Russell and the incredible Celtics documentary on HBO, which is fentanyl for me.
I've got to drop Simmons a text on that one, man. He my old man. The only thing when I'm watching it, which means it's great, the only thing that occurred to me a few times throughout was like, dang it, I wish the old man was here to see it, because
that is exactly the text I sent him. I said,
is that right?
I'm happy. My dad did not live to see the United States of America voting with Russia and North Korea in the United Nations, but I'm sad that he didn't live to see Celtic City, because it's unbelievable.
Well, my old man, he was in somewhere in those cutaways, the black and white to 59, 60, 61-ish. That's when he is in Boston specifically and going to those games all the time. And, as he would say, it was an easier ticket than it was to go to a Bruins game. They were.
Yeah. Well, that's, obviously in the doc that Bruins are selling out. And even during the dynasty, regular season games were half empty for the Bruins, which is also the nature of that city and America. We're getting there. We were on our way, but so Russell, it's watching Russell win the footage of him winning 11 titles in 13 years, and obviously he doesn't have Chamberlain's offensive statistics, but he has the most important statistic. The reason Eli Manning is a Hall of Famer. There's only one thing that matters. Winning championships. So Russell wins all the championships, and it's like defense is half the game. So if Russell's defensive prowess, it could be, statistically kept the way Wilt Chamberlain's 50 points a game is kept, it's like, you'd be like, oh my God, Russell is statistically dominant. But the only way we measure Alex English, Dominique Wilkins is points per game. And then we go, well, how much does it matter? Well, how many championships did Alex English and Dominique Wilkins win? As opposed to Bill Russell, who not a particularly good shooter, terrible free throw shooter, an awkward offensive player. But he won 2 championships his last 2 years of college, Olympic gold, 11 out of 13 in the NBA, and then said, yeah, I think my work is done here. The other guy who's a little more in the Alex English, Dominique Wilkins mode, but not even that good at that part, that I wanted to get Spaghetti to weigh in, is this Mikal Bridges contract for the Knicks. Okay, so it's funny that Spaghetti, if you can see us on Zoom, I don't know why you would be able to, but he's got a giant fork hanging behind him. It's a wooden fork, which perhaps is the fork that he's sticking in the New York Knicks season, as Jalen Brunson gets hurt last night against the Lakers, which is not that big a surprise because Brunson has to do everything because these guys stand around. I have no idea what Karl Anthony Towns' function on a basketball court is. He's just so clumsy and awkward, but at least he's big enough to get rebounds. Bridges played 43 minutes in a game where there were 108 missed shots and got 3 rebounds last night against the Lakers.
I think this is great, and I want to get Spaghetti's opinion as a Knickerbockers guy. But I think, talk about Bridges, the serendipity of how our reference to 60 years ago bridges us to present, and everything in between, and Alex English high scoring and no results. And that brings me to last night's game with Luka out there, and the discussion when the Lakers first got Luka here on this show was, concerns about defense. What are they going to do? You're going to have too many poor defenders on the floor in big spots in springtime, and that's not going to lead to results. In the short term, electric stuff once again against those Knickerbockers. And it's funny that you bring that one up, that you bring up Mikal Bridges, because I do think with about 2 minutes to go, he made one of the crazier athletic plays that doesn't show up on the score sheet, much like Bill Russell, that he saved that ball in his own end under the basket as he was flying out of bounds. I thought they may win this game based on the strength of that play. Obviously, they only got to overtime, but I am fascinated to hear where you are now. I know we're going to have to keep updating this, I think, all the way through the playoffs, but there's just and again, watching the Knickerbockers with Cat on the floor, it kind of makes me think in the last 10 or 15 years, or I don't know exactly at what moment it happened, but like you can win you can't be relevant and pretty good in the NBA. You can win a title even without having a true center on your roster. And that seems to be the case. Cat's on the floor. They didn't, I know I'm boiling it all down to the results late in Los Angeles, but I think you take my point, right? There are just very few teams that are going to beat the Lakers because the Lakers can't defend a guy in the low pivot, right?
Obviously, the Joker is the cheat code that will test that. But the guy,
if they catch him, if they get there,
one of the things that was like the Knicks obviously were primed to make a deep run before their entire team got hurt in the playoffs last year. And then when they started making moves, and I was, obviously, I don't think getting rid of Julius Randle was a problem based on what they had, but Towns is so the opposite of the way that Knicks team played last year. And Hartenstein is the heart and soul of what, those offensive rebounds, kicking it back out, high screen rolls, making those floaters. Like, he's so active. Towns disappears. I don't know what he's doing on offense. Like, you just stand around. You're so.
It seems awkward. It seems like he just seeks mismatches constantly. That's the notion of what he's doing.
Thunder and the Thunder have all these parts that are augmented by this Energizer Bunny in the middle, he's just a fury of activity. He's the opposite of Towns, who's like a fury of inactivity. Like, it's like, and Towns is bad defensively. And it's like, anyway, obviously we'll see the extent of the Brunson injury. I assume they'll shut him down. They could fall to the 4-5, but even with Brunson healthy, as a Celtic fan, I would rather play the Knicks in the second round than the Pistons. Like, the Knicks are a mess. OG did such an incredible job on Luka for 30 minutes. And, Towns is going 3 for 13 and Bridges scores 6 points. It's like, hey, OG's killing himself on defense. Can someone other than Brunson make a basket? They shoot 23% from 3. Deuce McBride comes in crunch time. He dribbles for 20 seconds and then shoots a fadeaway 2. Like, it just was all awful. Tibbs was awful. Given OG's effort on Luka for most of that game, they should have won by double digits. And they
By the
just
way, when you're watching that, I assume you watched at least the second half or whatever. I mean, there's a vibe that, and this is, we've had this discussion, but fans in any sports town are going to enjoy a successful team. If you're in a window where this is one of the better teams in that league, your city will rally around it and get excited. But it's even cooler when you play to an identity, that an existing identity. And I know the Lakers often is high end center, but also it's Showtime. And Luka is, I mean, he really is borderline in the best ways pro wrestling, like the faces and the flailing and the arguing. And he really does seem like he would sit there. Like if he were a WWE wrestler, they would lean into it, into the character that he organically is. And when he sat down on the bench, they would give him a cigarette and a beer to play it up a little bit, and maybe a cheeseburger just to play up how that vibe comes off of him. And he is a killer. And plus then you have LeBron. I understand why the rest of the league hates it. I think it's delightful. And I am with Kendrick Perkins in the worst parts of WWE. I mean, everything has to be an argument. Draymond versus and Chaz Barkley versus Kendrick. I don't care. It's about all that. But I think Luka and LeBron's Lakers can straight up can salvage, and in fact somehow wind up with the NBA getting more shine than it usually does. And that's a month after we were sitting here having conversations about, like, Jesus Christ, just shut it down, NBA. This ain't your year.
Well, the Germans have a great word for everything. Tortious panic.
They do.
Tortious panic is
they really do.
Is the
word for everything that does it.
Panic is the word for the gate is closing that is used to describe the midlife crisis that Eddie has to look forward to, where the gate is of your life and all the promise of your life is closing. And they have another word which I need to learn and memorize that means punchable face. And it's like the word is not Doncic, but it might as well be, because there's not a second of a game he's playing in where I'm like, I want to punch this fucking guy in the face. Like, and I'm like, and by the way, how are your opponents not punching? Like, no one deserves a full Kermit Washington facial reconstruction more than that whiny bitch who, by the way, he fouls constantly because his lateral mobility is so shitty on defense. And then every time he's like looking up at the Jumbotron and like pleading, and he fucked Jason Kidd last year in the playoffs, insisting on reviews to blowing.
I thought that was an important moment in Thursday night's game when Luka wanted it challenged and they refused from the bench.
And JJ Redick said,
I thought that was a big moment for real.
Yeah. JJ Redick goes, I know who you are. You're a flopper and a liar and a cheater and a piece of shit. You happen to play for my team. So I'm not going to hurt my team by listening to you, because I'm not Jason Kidd. I'm not going to get bullied into hurting my team because you're a whiny bitch. So Luka whiny bitches, as he always does, and JJ just folds his arms and goes, yeah, go get a fucking rebound. And, and then they show the replay and he's all over the guy's arm, and it's like, literally, what kind of a sociopath are you that you believe and would pass a polygraph that you did not foul that guy? Maybe he doesn't actually know the rules of basketball because he's also allowed to travel. By the way, that's
like when you tried to blame. I'm on Luka's side. You one time tried to blame me for a ball hitting me in the leg that didn't come within 18 inches of my person, and it's still talked about to this day.
It's a good example. It's a good example. So
it is a good example.
So Luka, as ugly as the Euro step is, right? So like you kind of come to a set, and then everybody stops, and then you take an additional step. It's awful. It's the aesthetics of the Euro step are so ugly. Last night, Luka comes to a stop, establishes his pivot foot, takes the Euro step, doesn't shoot. then does an additional like head fake, and it's like, that's a fucking travel. You have used all of your options. Now you have done your additional Euro step, which has to lead directly to a shot. You can't take 2 steps and
He's
then
on the block. I know the play you're talking about. Yeah.
And the announcers are like, oh my God, it's incredible. Like, it's fucking cheating. It's not incredible. It's traveling. Everybody.
I like that the Knickerbockers, you could see them too. You could literally see the Knickerbockers bench like, hey, Ralph's like, you're not going to call it anyway.
Yeah,
you really had that whole.
It's just a travel 14 inches from your fucking face. Why would you call that in the NBA? So anyway, the cheating, the crying, the whining,
let's get to
I don't
this.
think I've ever fucking despised the guy as much as that piece of shit. But I announced last year when he carried that shitty Mavericks team to the finals, I announced on this program, that's as close as Luka will ever get to a title. Not knowing, like, his running mate now is 10 times better than Kyrie Irving. What LeBron James is doing post 40, and I know it's like, well, obviously he's on peds. Obviously he's cheating. And it's like, hey, guess what? Lots of guys have done performance enhancing drugs. Nobody's ever done what he's doing. I don't, whatever.
Get ready, Sidney Crosby. Your ped window's coming, friend.
Everybody drops off. It doesn't, when Mark McGuire falls apart, it just ends quickly. It's not this. They put up in the game last night the side-by-side stats since LeBron has turned 40 versus his MVP season of 11 years ago, his prime. The stats are identical. If anything, slightly better this post 40 than at 27. And so it's like, we this whole Jordan LeBron debate. And, one of the things I think the Jordan lovers like me are like, well, yes, Jordan was a physical freak, but not that kind of physical freak. Jordan couldn't really just bully people to the rim. But
and it went away. His chief attribute went away around age 30, and he kept on rolling. He just developed into a completely different stylistic player and still was the best player in the game.
But LeBron, obviously for a lot of LeBron's career, you were like, you hope he takes a 3. Like, LeBron's a much better 3-point shooter than Michael Jordan ever was.
It is amazing how good a shooter LeBron James turned himself into. But then again, I feel validated because Retro Dave told you, not the world, but specifically you, Kevin Hench. I'm like, this overstatement about like, yeah, I'm a little bit worried about his perimeter shooting. Like, wait, he's one of the great specimens in college basketball. He's 6'8". He can do everything, but he's not going to be able to practice shooting and get better at that. He can do everything else, but he can't. They're like, it's going to take a couple of years, but I suspect he'll get there. That said, LeBron really had no game when he got to the league from beyond 12 feet, and is an assassin in big moments there.
I mean,
speaking of that, Kyrie
Irving obviously is kind of a one-dimensional player. It's offense, shooting, and like the fact that Luka now has a running mate who's a freight train piling up rebounds and assists and also scoring at a higher clip than Kyrie Irving. So now I'm like, oh, this Laker team, the Nuggets are weird. They're not as good as they were, and I'm not quite sure why, because Braun is better than Bruce Brown. So the team should be slightly better, but they're not. And I really do think it's going to be a Thunder Lakers Western Conference Finals. And the Thunder are so athletic, so quick, but those games, playoff games, come down to half court execution. And so it's like, is SGA going to be able to out half court Luka, which obviously he couldn't last year. And it's going to be close. It's going to be interesting. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, Nico Harrison I'm trying to think, like, obviously what the Mavericks did is beyond the plot of Major League, right? They set fire to a franchise in a way that has never been replicated. I mean, they traded a 5-time first team all NBA player for a waterlogged corpse in Anthony Davis. And then, Kyrie getting hurt as he had to carry so much more of the load and be the guy. Maybe not a surprise that he gets hurt. And you like now, and then if the beauty, the chef's kiss of it all, they raise ticket prices. Hey,
By the way, let's change the name of this show to Waterlogged Corpse. I think that's a good idea. Um, one thing that distracted me and bothered me for at least 4 minutes of my life was watching the game. They put up in the late stages of the fourth quarter a sort of stat graphic described as the Lakers in clutch games. Is this now an official statistic? Clutch games? Now the games themselves are clutch? What are we doing with the meaning of words? This is I can't stand it. I hate to sit here and have to parse through words, but this is how we lose meaning of words is when we start calling the games themselves. Hey, the Lakers are one of the best teams in clutch games. In clutch games. What the hell? Is that a must-win game? Is that
how close game? That's a game that's within 5.
I get it, but you take my point. It's stupid. Well, also stupid. The Lakers are running around there in their gold uniforms. Why? I don't know exactly when they decided that they should be fluorescent instead of Lakers gold, but it stinks. And if they're wearing Lakers gold in Los Angeles, their foe should be wearing their road getups. Why the Knickerbockers showed up wearing their whites also distracted me. And I was also thinking, I wonder if our old friend Eddie Spaghetti, formerly probably seated in primetime watching his Knickerbockers play the Loco Basketball Collective, but it was a late night game. Did you stay up to watch it now that you have to handle the grim reality of West Coast sports as an East Coaster, Eddie Spaghetti?
Well, I spent the first 24 years of my life on the East Coast, so I'm used to that. But to be completely honest, like I don't care about regular season basketball. I'll watch the Knicks in the playoffs, but like. I mean,
that's interesting. Neither does Mikal Bridges.
I mean, but the team was fun last year when obviously they had the Villanova trio, and it just seemed like it was like you say like when you have the target on your back, the curse of supposed to. Now that they weren't supposed to win a title, but they would have been in the mix. And I just think they made the right moves. I bringing in Cat and bringing in Bridges, like they seemed smart at the time, and now with the supposed ankle sprain for Jalen Brunson, the NBA just kind of is just lost on me. Like I just have not really enjoyed it lately at all. The regular season is terrible, and you have LeBron screaming at like Stephen A. Smith in the sidelines. It's like, with this is going on right now, like I'm focused on the NHL trade deadline. I'm focused on Giancarlo Stanton's 36-year-old achy elbow and stuff. Like I have more important and the quarterback of my NFL team. So more important fish to fry than to worry about like a middle of the road Knicks team.
Do you know, this is great. I do want to ask you about that free agency stuff, but do break in, Eddie Spaghetti, obviously, if any big-time move happens.
Mikko Rantanen is going to sign the extension, so he's going to be traded to the Dallas Stars. And Dallas Stars, you could have made the case they were already the best NHL team pre-deadline, and adding a guy like Rantanen, I mean, they most likely, in my opinion, are going to win the Stanley Cup.
Is that so? That's your official pick. That was my pick a year ago.
It was last year. I had Rangers Stars.
The Hurricanes are flipping Rantanen now.
Yes,
I read that was a possibility. Wow, that is weird. Because
I propose, by the way,
a contender.
The Browns are browsing again. They refuse to even sit down with Myles Garrett. I listen. I think I fixed it for both pro football teams in the state of Ohio. What about a Hendrickson for Myles trade? Straight up, who says no? That's a great trade right there. Do that one. Spaghetti. I feel like. But before I get into the football, I did just to finish up the Lakers Celtics thing, because it does feel like there's a chance that the Lakers really are going to wind up in a big time series in late spring. I think the dream is I get OKC, and that would be great for all this discussion about face of the game and next generation. If you could get one more, if you could get Dubs, the Lakers in the West, and then the Celts in the East, and whoever survives, Steph and company v LeBron and Luka and company. I mean, the ratings would be through the roof. But it would be fascinating to watch. Who would, if it were Lakers Celtics, who does a New York City fan root for?
I assume you're asking Spaghetti.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
Oh, I thought he may have passed away from the idea of it. I didn't know what happened. Okay.
no, I am. I mean, I guess it would be split, just like most things in the city with multiple teams. Like everyone, it's a melting pot. There's no real.
Well, it's an interesting question because it's basically who do you hate more?
I guess it's Alien Predator.
And obviously,
yeah.
I would assume the Knicks. I mean, would hate the Celtics more, given how many times we've handed your asses to you this year. But what was weird in 81, the Celtics, the get this, okay. And by the way, watch Celtics City. It's unbelievable. In 81, the Celtics trail the Sixers 3-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals. In Game 5, facing elimination, the Celtics trail by 6 with 1:28 left. Sixers have 1:28 going to the finals to try to avenge. Oh, actually, the Rockets are going to be waiting for them. So they'll win the title. The Sixers, the title is there for the Sixers. They blow that game. Game 6 in the Spectrum. The Celtics have lost 11 straight games in the Spectrum. The Sixers lead by 17 in the first half. They lose the game by 2. Then in Game 7, back in the Garden, they lead by 7 with 4 minutes and 30 seconds to play, and they lose that game by 1. I mean, just backbreaking. Then, so the Celtics and Sixers go at it over and over and over and over again. When the Celtics lose to the Sixers in the conference finals,
the best. And as a
they
young sports fan,
beat
Dave,
LA,
watching the game with my old man in Pittsburgh, the old Boston Celtics diehard. That was the best. Yeah, I thought
LA.
that was
And it's like
one of the great sports moments.
Even at the time, I'm like, beat LA. We fucking hate these guys more than anyone on planet Earth. Like,
you disagree?
LA has not laid a glove on the Celtics. Beat LA. Jerry West went to his grave haunted by those 7 straight finals losses to the Celtics. Beat LA. The Celtics and LA hadn't met in the final, like their bird.
And you own them. Right.
Yeah,
it would be like
what do we have against LA? It's like beat Philly. Like, fuck these guys. When Magic went for 42, 15, and 7 in Game 6 against the Sixers in 1980, I was like, good. Fuck these Sixers, man. So that was weird when it's like, who's chanting beat LA? Was it Sixer fans?
I think it's funny. You hate Luka. You don't like LeBron. You like him better than some people do. I have never understood. I understand the political stuff and he sometimes comes off as inauthentic. The hate some people have for that guy. I mean, the Bronny thing was nice. Wouldn't that be nice if you were in a position to do that?
I mean, look, I have basically no criticisms of LeBron. Like, this guy.
Oh, you're good with him.
You look at guys that go, play it. I mean, obviously nobody's ever played at that level for 20 years. So it's like when you're going to retire as the NBA's all-time leading scorer and, oh, by the way, be 3rd all-time in assists. Yeah, you're the greatest player of all time. I know people like love Jordan, but it's going to be statistically ridiculous. It's going to be aesthetic, basically. But then to add in the part of like, no DUIs, no fights, no fights in nightclubs. Like, no, it's like he's just. I think he's been beyond exemplary.
I think if he is the number 2 to Luka, if that's the narrative or whatever, if he gets one at 40, I mean that evidence added in late is going to help his cause for what it matters for sports fans. And I know, as I say all the time, I say again, when people get, I'm so sick of this stupid debate. Who cares about this? Like, I'm not sure what lures you to sports. I love talking about who's the best. in an era and comparing the eras. I'm not sure exactly what sports fans are supposed to do. It's a passive experience, but this is part of engaging with other sports fans, is comparing and contrasting. I never got that. But speaking of that, I think, to me, if you said who's the most hateable hockey team of all time, it's the Flyers, the Broad Street Bullies, and all that, and the bad boys of the Pistons. But people hated the Celtics. People hated the Larry Bird, Kevin McHale Celtics. They seem collectively unfit. Like, this was the best basketball team in the world. Dennis Johnson, your point guard, appears to have a potbelly. So. And they were all like gangly, pasty white guys with sharp elbows. I think America, I disagree with this sentiment, but I think the Lakers would count as one of the most hated teams of all time if they won it this year. Is that the vibe you get? Because I think it's awesome, but I think outside of Los Angeles, people are like, how did they get Luka?
One thing that's very interesting is the way, obviously, everybody roots for their team, and, Spaghetti was the biggest Juan Soto fan in the world for that season, and then it's like he's gone. He's not really a part of Yankee lore, obviously, but Laker fans, because they're so loyal to Kobe, because Kobe was their guy and never went anywhere, they don't love LeBron the way they love Kobe, and so there's already like a weird mercenary, because LeBron just plays where he wants to play. He goes, I want to play here this year, and I'm going to go over there, and then I'm going to go back there, and then I'm going, now I want to live in Brentwood. Okay. So it's different than a guy like
right.
Kobe. It's like, I'm a Laker. So there's already like a mercenary feel to it. And then the thing where Pelinka basically, this is Syl driving Drea Di Matteo into the woods. Like, Pelinka fucking did his friend Nico Harrison. He's like, I'm going to fucking end your career. Like, I claim to be your friend. I'm your friend. And hey, Nico, man, I'd just really appreciate it if you didn't talk to anybody else about this trade. Like, I'd really appreciate it if you didn't put this out there on the market. Like, I don't want to, I think this should just be just two really close friends. Like, he's about to shoot this fucking guy in the woods. Like, it's so pathological that he claims to be that guy's friend and then just fucking ends Nico Harrison. There's a famous name in Red Sox history. Harry Frazee is the guy who, got rid of Babe Ruth for $100,000, allegedly to finance his Broadway play, No Net, which is really a different play, I think. But anyway, so that's going to be Nico Harrison's legacy. I don't know if he'll catch on with another team or what, but he'll be a joke. He'll be a punchline as Luka makes all NBA first teams, in the next decade, and the Mavericks are a shambles, and maybe they, the Adelson family moves them to Vegas, whatever. Pelinka did that to him. You did that to him, and you claim to be friends. Anyway, so
by the way, it's in my head, so I have to say it because I'm a nitwit. Rick Burleson, Jerry Remy, Butch Hobson, George Scott, and Fisk, Jim Rice, Freddie Lynn, Dewey Evans. Right?
Nice. Yes.
Thank you.
Oh my God. There's a team that blew a 14.5 game lead to the Yankees.
Do the $78. Now do the $79. That's fair.
All right. $79. Okay. Is Frank Tavares still at shortstop?
Oh, they traded him away to the Metropolitans.
In 70. Let me do. 79. Tim Foley.
There you go.
Okay. Tim Foley, Scrap Iron, Phil Garner.
There you go.
Pop
Stennett is gone to the coast.
Pop Stargell, Bill Madlock.
There you go.
That's the infield. Ed Ott and Manny Sanguian.
More Steve Nicosia at that point, but okay.
Okay. Omar Moreno, the Cobra, and then left field. Well, was
future Red Sox.
Was Mike Easler?
He spent some time in left field. Okay. Bill Robinson was out there.
Bill Robinson. Was John Milner getting at bats on that team?
John Milner, the Hammer. He was one of the utility guys, some first base, he would get some pitch
Well,
hitting duty.
I give you,
Anyway.
you did slightly better in that, but you have an advantage. Like my dad wasn't a Pirates fan. Like you
Sure.
have a little bit of advantage. Okay. So yes, the Lakers, to answer your question, will be one of the most despicable, like a crime was committed. Whatever the Lakers do this year will be the result of a
And their coach is
crime
JJ Redick.
being committed. A crime was committed against sports fans, against the Mavericks, against the NBA by Rob Pelinka with Nico Harrison's complicity. I mean, these guys should be charged with some kind of like fucking interstate corruption. So that's terrible. But I had this thought watching the incredible Celtic City documentary. So
what the hell? You getting a piece of the action at this point? What's going on?
Oh, it is the greatest television.
Did you enjoy it?
So it gets better. It starts awesome and gets better. So the Celtics lose in Bird's rookie year, 79-80. They lose to the Sixers in 5. And Daryl Dawkins and Caldwell Jones completely dominate the paint against the undersized Celtics. So then the Celtics go out, speaking of Pelinka, Nico Harrison robbery, and they get Robert Parrish and Kevin McHale for what ended up being Joe Barry Carroll, Joe Barely Cares, and Ricky Brown. So that's a fleecing. So the Celtics reload Robert Parrish.
I don't think you'd be allowed. I think people forget about the Chief nickname. I don't think you could do that in the 21st century. Could you?
I don't know. I mean, it was Cornbread Maxwell. Probably couldn't call him Cornbread anymore. But anyway, he dubbed him based on the One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest character. I don't know. Chief, Cigar Store Indian. I don't know. So anyway,
I don't think you could call another human being. Yeah, you look like a cigar store Indian. That's your new nickname, and it's not intended to be offensive to you.
But a giant one. Chief, come on, Chief. So the Celtics come up short, reload, get Chief and Kevin McHale, and win the championship in 81. Then the Sixers come up short in 82 against the Lakers again. And they're like, you're this close. And they're like, we're going to get Moses Malone. Really? You're a millimeter from winning the championship. Yeah, we're going to get Moses Malone. So then the Sixers win in 83. And it's kind of like, Andrew Toney, Julius Erving, Maurice Cheeks. Yeah, we're getting Moses Malone. So it's over. We're going to win the championship. And they do. Celtics had Parrish and McHale.
Sort of like the Eagles getting Saquon Barkley. Like, you guys are pretty good already.
So then the Sixers get Moses Malone, win the championship. And then the Celtics are like, all right, we're going to trade Rick Roby for Dennis Johnson. Like, we're going to trade a guy that's going to be out of the league momentarily for the NBA Finals MVP from 1979, DJ. Okay. And then the Celtics win the championship in 84. The Dodgers added Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, Moses Malone, and Dennis Johnson after winning the championship. We won it all. And we are going to add Blake Snell and Sasaki, and we're just going to take all the guys. We're going to take all the guys and enjoy Major League Baseball fans. Like, it's so criminal that, Manfred just stands, but there's nothing that can be done. One team can have all the guys and just like defer salary or go, yeah, we don't have to pay the kid, the 23-year-old. We don't have to pay him anything.
I hear you. But the counter to that is what's really fascinating is it's as though it's willful. So the opposite of that is hard salary cap, revenue sharing, and all the rest of it that is pro football. And so when there isn't the advantage of like, well, we can spend 100 times what you're willing to spend to give yourself a playing advantage, everybody's theoretically even. It's crazy that the Browns and Jets number never comes up specifically because of what ownership does to them. It gets in the way of them doing stuff. And you could make the same case about the Cowboys and maybe the Bungles too. Their window may be done now with this, like Hubbard's retiring and well, we want to keep T. Higgins. That's what the guy wants. That's what Bleach Blonde Burrow wants. And so we got to keep him and Chase. And so, I mean, this is going to be, forget Air Coryell or any other reference in history you would make. I mean, what are they going to do this year? What's that team going to be? I mean, it's going to be fun, if nothing else. I mean, you're going to have Joe Burrow and those two pass catchers and nobody playing defense. They may have to, the guy who they brought from Notre Dame, Golden Spaghetti, he may actually have to play nose in some instances for the Bungles this year. But let's do this real quick as we wrap it up. It's free agency. We're right here. We did some good draft talk. Give me if you are the general manager or owner, let's say you're Bob Kraft today, Kevin Hench, and you get to walk in with Mike Vrabel and say, this is who I want to target. This is the guy I want. Elliot Wolf, this is the guy who spend what it takes. Who's the guy that you want to add to the roster right now?
Well, I know he's not technically a free agent, but like, I think Hendrickson is at the peak of his powers at a position that ages well. Like edge rushers they could go kind of deep in their career. And I think even though, the left tackle market is not strong and the left tackle draft is not strong. So you don't want to overpay for a guy who's only going to be overpaid because the market is so weak. Drake May roll right this year. But I think the Patriots should load up on defense like that, Drake May is going to have to make winning plays with his legs, but make that defense awesome. And I think Vrabel, like Harold Landry, a reunion with Harold Landry's been talked about. Like, I think, presumably Barmore comes back. I really want them to draft Mason Graham with the 4th pick, make that defensive line a game wrecker. I think the Eagles proved how far you can go with a 4-man rush if none of those guys can be blocked. And, that should be, and then try to win games, 17-13.
It is the whole thing for all of our consumption here on this show, with talking about the QBs and everything, and it's the essential ingredient, but also like the 1A to that is not just offensive line, but as we saw this past January and February and have for the last 10 years, defense has now just been boiled down to, or at least can be with the high-end teams, to like, can you in the second half get a pass rush? Like you can't just get gashed in the run endlessly and expect to win all your playoff games. But if things are about, mediocre in most phases, if you have a plus on the offensive line and a quarterback, and then the other thing would be, can you heat them up? When you get the lead, can you get pressure on the superhero quarterback? So Milton Williams is there. Jonathan Allen is now on the market. Josh Sweat can be had. I think it's those sort of, even though we know intellectually that those guys are essential to success, it feels uninspired. It kind of goes back to where we started this whole conversation. You want to hear a splash, but you don't want to hear DK Metcalf because you consider him to be a little mercurial, but that's what most wide receivers are. There's some names out there like Stephon Diggs. You don't want that one. Amari Cooper has never, to me, added up to being worth it. I know he's had a couple of moments. Devontae Adams is out there, but he's getting long in the tooth. Here's the one, Chris Godwin. All those injuries, I'm surprised he's only 29 years old. Shouldn't he be more like 39 years old? He interests me for the Steelers, Chris Godwin does. He would be the guy, like if you think of him in the formula, like we have George Pickens, Chris Godwin makes a million % sense to me.
Well, it's funny.
Right?
I would put Godwin in terms of the roll of the dice, and I think his body is older than 29, frankly, because of what he's been through. You remember Juju's golden years in Pittsburgh when he was whipping guys from the slot for 97-yard touchdowns. Like, Juju was playing in the slot and putting up wide receiver numbers, and then the Patriots got him at the wrong time, and he hasn't been an impact player since he left Pittsburgh. And I would put Godwin on that exact trajectory. I don't think Chris Godwin is going to have any more 12 catches for 140-yard games.
That's probably right. Yeah, it settles into what we saw from Adam Thielen in 24 type of production or role in the offense. Some good corners out there too. Carlton Davis, Travarius Ward, DJ Reed, Asante Samuel. Um, Eddie Spaghetti, go ahead. Give us one free agent that you want your New York Football Giants to ink or trade for.
Uh, it's gonna be the guy that's in the stealing all the headlines, and they've been linked to him. But I think when I say this, I'm not going crazy. It's not because I was touting him last year. I think it just makes the most sense where the Giants are. But that is Aaron Rodgers. The number one reason is because I do think it's a colossal mistake for the Giants to pony up and whatever it takes to move up to number one to like with the Tennessee Titans and take the quarterback there, most likely Cam Ward. I just don't think that I think Cam Ward will be fine. I don't think you have to move up for one. If he's there at three, fantastic. But moving up to one and giving away extra picks is a really big no-no for me. So having Rodgers there, who by all means played fairly well last year, he's no longer a superstar, but he's definitely the league average, middle of the road, and just to learn from him, whatever quarterback's beneath him, even if Rodgers isn't the best mentor, just watching how he prepares is good enough. And we just recorded the other day with Lance, and Lance said he's the most talented quarterback he's ever seen. It's like just seeing what he does is enough. And right now the Giants, like, they're not going to be a contender. The best case scenario for them, even if they were going after like Stafford, which we all three of us talked about it, and Hench said this, and I totally agree. It's like best case scenario, third in NFC East, and you're fighting for a wild card spot. And I just think right now the Giants' path going forward is to develop that next quarterback. And I like the idea of having a veteran there that still has a live arm. We saw some great throws he made with the Jets. And I just think that if you get a guy in there, if it's Cam Ward, if it's Shador, you learn from Rodgers. And if they end up being something great, if they're not, then like most people predict in 2 years from now, when Arch declares, still having his uncle Eli working for the organization, you're going to be in the mix for him, obviously. And you already have the stud Malik Neighbors, so I just think like getting him the ball is your path to victory. They lost Saquon, but they did a pretty good job. Like the offensive line's certainly
I
not
agree.
strength,
I think that the undercovered thing
and
about the Giants and all the heat Shane's caught this rightly for the decision he made, Dimes over Saquon and everything. The draft they had was really good.
Tracy was good, and Singletary, they signed him as like they equal to a pretty good running back. The O-line, like I said, like it's not a strength, but it was certainly not as bad as it was in years past. And when you have a veteran quarterback who just knows where to go with the football, I think Malik Neighbors, the thing that scares me about the Giants' offense is there's a lot of guys that have the potential but not really there. Like they draft Theo Johnson, the tight end from Penn State last year. Like there's no real tight end there. There's really no number two option in terms of a receiver. Like a fantasy tip way too early in March 7th, but if you want a guy that's going to for sure get over 120 targets, like it's going to be Malik Neighbors, like obviously barring injury. So I think he's going to have a monster season, and I just think that Rodgers being there for however long you can keep him there healthy this season with the younger quarterback, because they are for sure taking a quarterback. There's no error on that.
I agree with you, and I like one team taking Aaron Rodgers and all of that. My dream, I'm gonna stand by the Cam Ward dream until it dissolves for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Watch this. I know, obviously, everybody knows now that they want Justin Fields. Russ is only a fallback for them. Watch out for Sam Darnold, though. There's no reason at this point that the Vikings bring him back. So I think that like the idea there's not a market for him. That's music to any GM's ears, but based on the way the Steelers operated last year, they might be a little spooked by like, boy, we went bargain shopping and look at the results we got. Unless they're spooked by that, I could see them looking at Sam Darnold too, especially if they lose Justin Fields, because then they're into the abyss. And everybody who is cavalier about like, hey, good, that's the medicine they need to set themselves up for 2026. You're not going to be able to sell that to TJ Watt and Cam Hayward. They're going to have to try to get someone viable at that spot. So we still have to hear where Kirk Cousins is going to land. Aaron Rodgers, I'm with you on that one. I think that's the funniest result. Good times.
Oh my
And
God.
we're just
I got a second. It would be awesome if Aaron Rodgers went back to that stadium.
I think it's the funniest thing could happen.
Nothing would make me happier than watching Micah Parsons and Jalen Carter climb off of that broken body on that turf. Like, Spaghetti, how many games could the Giants possibly win?
But I think you're looking at it wrong though. Like, because I just like if you bring like the other options are he's a better quarterback than Justin Fields. So like, and Justin Fields is not going to mentor your young quarterback. And Kirk Cousins, talk about a broken body. It's Kirk Cousins for sure. Sam Darnold's way too expensive for somebody who's at this point still a relatively he's a wild card. Rodgers coming in humbled to however much he could be humbled, knowing he's not a superstar, not getting that high end number like for his deal. I think if they're just like, look, we're gonna be honest with you, you're gonna come in here for a year, you're gonna help out Sanders, you're gonna help out Ward, you're gonna start until you absolutely suck, and then we're gonna yank you. I think if he just like, okay, I guess I'm doing that, like I'm okay with it because again, the ceiling for the Giants is third place and a potential wild card, which is I mean really pie in the sky because I don't even see that happening. This is for sure a rebuild year in the sense of like you're just preparing the future quarterback. So if he's going to come in there and get slammed around, but still sling it a couple times, and he makes some throws where you go, wow, he still got it. If he wants to bring along his buddy Devontae Adams to help out neighbors, I am all for that. I'm not looking at the season in terms of like how good Rodgers could be to push them to the playoffs. I'm looking at it as like, let's not be a 2-win team where people want to stab the owner, and then he's also helping out the future quarterback. So like
the way to do that is to get Russell Wilson. You get the same effect in the Giants if you wind up with Shedeur or Cam Ward. The narrative that isn't as much fun or as funny, but that kind of checks out in my book, Hench, is Rodgers to Vegas. Doesn't that make sound like Brady? We're misunderstood. I feel like they probably have some kinship. Like only you and I really get each other. We see each other eye to eye. The outside world doesn't know what we go through kind of vibe. I think Brady could sell that to Rodgers, and Rodgers would find that appealing.
Which would also be delightful. Like just, I mean, obviously, I just want him to suck again and to lose.
Well, watch him. Why? I mean, he's fascinating to me, and then we'll end it here. But he's fascinating to me because he's not a bum. He's still pretty good. Was last year, but who knows what he's going to be at 41. You don't know when he reaches the cliff and falls off of it. But Colts make some sense, and that's not a terrible roster. If you drop them onto the Colts, they're a halfway decent team and might chase that division title. I could see that one too. Nashville could make some sense. So where he goes is significant. I think the market out there for Justin Fields, I think he and his team have wisely been said, we're not going to, why would we possibly sign with you now, Steelers, if you wanted us, as I forewarned for months on end. And now here we are. I guarantee you there are teams out there getting ready to say to Justin Fields, like, 2 years, $50 million. You want to match that, Pittsburgh? Like someone's going to swoop in there, and then the Steelers are going to be looking at Kyle Allen,
real quick, because
or Jalen Milroe.
So Woody Johnson, and I don't know the answer to this, but like he didn't invent baby shampoo, right? Did he inherit that?
Yeah,
he's a Johnson and Johnson, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So now there are owners, I guess George Steinbrenner knew something about shipping, right? He made his fortune in shipping. And John Henry, the Red Sox owner, he like figured out derivatives in market trading, and like that there are owners who develop expertise in a field and then go, well, I'm a genius because look how I figured out shipping or derivatives. So obviously I'm super smart, and therefore I should weigh in on firing Billy Martin or getting rid of Terry Francona or whatever because I'm a smart guy. Like Woody Johnson's probably a moron, right? He just inherited a baby shampoo empire. I don't know. Like, so there is this exercise that we were asked to do in acting class shortly after I arrived in LA. And
I would much rather this be a story that comes from 2025. I'd love to hear like, oh yeah, I've just decided to try my hand at being an actor.
I do have a part-time job now, but it's neighborhood vigilante, Charles Bronson and Death Wish. I am literally the craziest member of the neighborhood watch, chasing people out of our neighborhood. It's a bit of a crime.
Shooting people with Nerf guns. What the hell? You're a grown man.
My wife's ready to go to Gun World. It's crazy. But anyway,
to shoot you.
So the acting exercise is like, 20 of us stand in a circle. And the idea is to develop this like group mind where you're paying so much attention to each other, nobody interrupts. And then without any pattern, the group has to try to count to 20 one at a time, with each person taking a different number independently without two people saying seven at the same time. Unbearable, obviously. And you're with morons, LA acting class. So as soon as he gives the assignment, I go, oh, well, the way to do this is obviously never say anything. You're not going to contribute at all. I said 3. Did you guys hear me? I said 12. So the way to do it is, if you had smart people in the group, is as soon as the first person, like, have 2 people go back and forth or 1 person count to 20, and we'll be done with this fucking retarded exercise and can go on to the next stupid thing that this fucking guy's charging us $600 to learn how to act. But of course, you've got actors who want to hear the sound of their own voice. Oh, we made it to 3 and then we collided again. Oh, we both said 3. You got to go back. Got to start over. Here we go again, morons. Let's try to count to 20. So as soon as the best thing to do is say
I'd rather just
nothing.
Somebody give me a traditional form of torture. Yeah, at least I would know. Like, it'd be like,
hey, idiots. Hey, chick who was recommended to this class by Tracy Lords. Shut the fuck up. The way to get through this exercise is don't say anything. You can't contribute. So if you're Woody Johnson, you don't fucking know anything about football. You don't know anything about baby shampoo, I'm guessing, either. You're just a rich moron. Any syllable you express about football will be dumber than the people you have hired to make football decisions. So not only does he fucking put a big footprint on his team, hey, Woody Johnson's got a lot of ideas, and my kids have some ideas too. My even dumber than me kids have some fucking ideas. They even further removed from the real world kids. So he basically, like, the dumbest guy in the room, Woody Johnson, is going to go, I got my consigliere, Aaron Rodgers. We're going to get on the phone after games, and we're going to make this right. And I mean, wow, what a fucking season. That's a documentary I want to see. Like, okay, I'm firing the coach. Okay, I'm going to get you Devontae Adams. What else do you need, boss? And I mean, just a fucking apocalypse.
People forget about the Hassan Reddick trade.
Because the Hassan Reddick, because what you should have done is said nothing. You should have.
They got everybody. They got everybody. They got Alan Lazard. They got all his guys for him.
And that was why it was great. Kraft for those 20 years was like, I don't know, that guy's the football guy. Like, just bet on your football people.
But of course, you would do it too. Why would you not do it? Kevin Hench, if he bought a thing he didn't know anything about, but you had a passion for it, you would definitely involve yourself in it.
No, listen, and you're wrong.
This makes them heroes.
I'm so competitive. My competitiveness trumps my ego, and so we have my Simmons and I have this buddy named Jay Yarrow who writes for Bill Maher. This guy is a draft savant. Every year, he and his brothers do the whole draft, and they have this is your report card. And he's so much better at it. He's always like, oh, that guy was at the Senior Bowl. That guy couldn't block anybody. That guy was great. Like, he just knows everything about college football. If he told me, like, he's like, that guy's arms are too short, he can't play tackle in the NFL, I would not go, I don't know. I like the cut of his jib. He really looked me in the eye when I sat down and talked to him. Like, these fucking
the other would be right. You would base it off of casual anecdotes at the bar. That's what Mark Davis is doing.
Oh yeah. Oh my God. At the scouting combine, he had a real firm handshake. Like, who gives a shit? Fucking the guys who know what they're doing, or that you're paying to know what they're doing. By the way, if you know more than your GM, you've done a terrible job hiring a GM. You've already
that's like me though. That's the equivalent of me playing Sega 94 hockey, NHL 94, but only using the Penguins. The that's an inherent advantage of like having smart people to lean on. That's me leaning on Lemieux and Yager, digital versions of them to beat my foe instead of using my brain power. I don't think you're understanding that in the communist world in which that pro football is, these are heroes because the gig would be revealed. The whole if every team, if it was just like every 32 year, your team got its turn in the winner's circle, it would be unsatisfying. We need somebody to never win, and that's why Woody and Jimmy Haslam and Jera and a few other handful of guys are heroes because they take that bullet for the rest of us. So we feel like it's more competitive than you think. You think there's parity or just rando, but it's not. Anyway, enough about all that. Eddie Spaghetti, you're the tops. Appreciate you making time for us out there in Florida in your new life out there. Hope it's good. What's the weather?
Right now, it is very sunny and probably approaching 80 degrees. So very
Are you
nice.
near spring training?
Yeah, I'm like an hour from the Mets, Port St. Lucie.
Go
Yankees
do
a
it.
little further.
Prediction for you: Juan Soto isn't a bust or anything, but doesn't live up to that contract. How could he? It's the biggest contract of all time. The expectation is he delivers somewhere on the level of Shohei Ohtani, which he's not going to do. So there you go, Spaghetti. That's a little bit of sunshine for you, right?
I've never really hated the Mets before. In fact, I've rooted for them.
And
like
throws his hands into the air. Was that aren't we done?
The 2015.
Is that what that was?
My last comment is I did root for the Mets in the 2015 World Series versus the Royals. Since the Soto stuff happened and the whole I love Uncle Stevie, the love fest, the Steve Cohen love fest online, like poo-poo the Mets. I wish them.
Well, it was wrong for you to root for the Mets at any point in your life.
I mean root. I don't root for other teams, but
okay.
I'm like, oh, if they win, it's better than the Royals.
Hey, everybody, subscribe wherever you find the podcast. Subscribe on YouTube. Go ahead.
You brought this on yourself, Shek. Spaghetti. Does anything sum up Shek's air traffic control ability as a podcast host?
I just got hired. I'm a new air traffic controller in New America.
We're landing planes as we speak. This is the new FAA. Good luck, everybody.
Multitasking.
Hey, by the way, Miriam Adelson, who's
I gotta go. Wait, my chicken. I think just
hold on. By the way, guess private planes don't have their own air traffic control tower. You don't go like, hey, I have my own air traffic control tower. Good luck, everybody. Anyway, so Shek goes,
do you want some eggs? I can drop them off. My burgeoning.
I've been eating eggs. I've been eating eggs everywhere I go. That's my privilege. So anyway.
He froze. I love it. He froze. That's what he deserves. See? I got juice. I got power. I think we just leave it there because I don't know if he's coming back. All right. Eddie Spaghetti, good times. Looks like you're growing a mustache. Are you? Fu Manchu?
I mean, it's attached to my usual beard, so.
Okay. Any final NHL trades to announce before we leave?
I know Lawton sent from the Flyers. He was sent to Toronto, the center. I know the center trade market has been kind of thin, so that's a big.
Pens are back next year. Pens are back in a year.
I can't believe.
Go ahead, finish your thought. We were going to dump you.
That was so karmic because I was like, I'm teeing up just to destroy Shek, and then the internet's like, go easy on it.
Destroy away, friend.
Okay, so this is Shek's podcast host, air traffic control in a nutshell. It's like, all right, fans, thanks a lot, man. It's been a great episode. We'll see you next time. Hey, Spaghetti, how's the weather in Florida? What the fuck? We're done. Obviously, it's over. It's like we're still recording. Like, hey, what's the weather? Like, oh, almost 80. Interesting. Okay, interesting. Who gives a shit? Like, we're done.
Fucking it was way better when I was naming the Red Sox infield from 78.
That was great content. Boomer Scott. That's great content. Oh, 79 in Florida. Wow, that's good stuff.
Hey, everybody. Have a great weekend. It's been a thin slice of heaven.